Thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to thank the organization for the invitation. And I would like to say that I'm very pleased to be here. I feel a little exotic in this community of people from the UK and coming all from southwestern Europe. And I hope it will be interesting. It will be, I know you are very much involved, all of you, in conservation issues and landscape issues in the UK. And I hope this journey to Southern Europe, Southwestern Europe, will be somehow challenging, inspiring, and also relevant. It's a short time I have, so I will need to be synthetic, but I hope I will be able to give some information which will be bring you insights into this reality we have and what you can apply from this reality and from the message I have for you today in your reality of your country. This is the landscape I come from, and this is what I'm going to talk about. This is southern Portugal, south of the river Tejo, and it's wood pastures, as you can see. We have these scattered, dispersed trees. They are cork homes and green oaks, cork oaks and green oaks. And then you have grazing of, it could be of cattle, sheep, goats, pigs in the undercover, and there's this fuzzy pattern, which is very characteristic from this system. So we don't have very clear boundaries. It's very fuzzy with changing densities. And once in a while, we have a plot of another use, like the vineyard you see on the front. So this is the landscape I'm going to talk about, and this is the context where we are in relation to Europe. And I'm very sorry, at the last minute I saw there was no Scotland in the first map. I don't know what happened. This is an OECD map, and I'm really sorry, but I just saw it just this morning. Well, I don't know what happened, but this is, the map shows the density of population, and so the classification in rural and urban areas, and relatively rural, many urban, many rural, and then the intensity of farm systems. And as you can see, we are located in this position that we have very few people, but also very low intensity farm systems. And what is this? This is similar particularly to Scotland, I believe. What is particular about the Southern European context? I think we have these are just some highlights, but I think it's important for you to understand why we are placed. We have this scarcity of conditions for agriculture, and water availability is a limiting factor. This is different from what you have here, and we have only intensive agriculture where we have water, where we have irrigation possibilities. And therefore, systems have developed a long time. They always have developed in this complementarity between cultivation, grazing, and forestry. This is very typical for the Mediterranean. At the same time, we have rather conservative farmers and people related with agriculture, and a very stable property structure. And so that means that properties are conserved in the same hands, in the same families, and very often because taxes are very low, you don't need to cultivate, you don't need to make an income out of it. And this is an important driver to understand what's going on, because you don't need to make every year profit out of your land, and therefore you can let it abandoned or not used. And at the same time, we still have strong connections to rurality. So we have almost everyone in Portugal has still a root in the countryside, someone in a village, a family member, a house, a relationship. So this means that we have a kind of hybrid community in the countryside. People are coming back, but people still have the relations which were there before. And we have a lot of these traditional high nature value farming systems maintained, even if we have trends for intensification. What is then the results? And the first map with all the red area is a map produced by an agricultural economist. It's about what are the characteristics of Portugal. And the red, only the green one shows where the main use is agriculture. The other one, the blue, is services, or it's industry and urban, and the yellow is services, and the red is all low density territories. The territories, nobody knows what are we going to do about these territories. But at the same time, as you can see, this is the map of Natura 2000 network. We have this very rich landscape and diversity in all this territory. And I would like to say that all Natura 2000 sites, they are mostly 99%, they are private land. So it's not, we don't have land on the hands of corporations or associations or the public. So it's all of this is private land, and it's mainly farming or forestry land. So this is the context. And now I would like to talk about a specific area, which is a Natura 2000 site, the site of Monfurado. It's located very close to Lisbon, 100 kilometers from Lisbon, and therefore it's very interesting for recreation, people coming for the weekend, people coming for to stay, to moving into the countryside. So, and it's a very high attractive landscape, but it's a farming landscape. It's this silvopastoral system I just talked to you about before. And we have two types of this. I don't know if you know this concept of high nature value farming systems. We have the two types in this area, and this is the kind of example of the whole southern Portugal is like that. We have the type 2, it's small scale olive groves and vegetable gardens and small scale farming around towns. And I'm not going to talk about it, even if it's very interesting and it has a lot of very interesting processes going on. But then we have the farmland with high proportion of semi-natural vegetation, these silvopastoral systems, and this is what I'm going to talk about. This is occupying 90% of this Natura 2000 sites, Monfurado sites, which has the particularity that it rains a little more. There's a hill and it rains a little more than in the surroundings, so it's more fertile than in many other places in Alentejo. What is the Montado, the silvopastoral system? It was before an agro-silvopastoral system. It tends to be more and more only silvopastoral, so with no cultivation under the trees. The tree density is very changing, so it can be between 10 and 100 trees per hectare. And then you use the undercover for extensive pastures. And we have different actors managing. I will not go into it, but often you have a landowner who manages the grazing areas or the trees, and then you have someone who keeps bees in the area, another group who is hunting, someone else who comes and picks the mushrooms. So it's a very complex system of a community almost, a network of people living or profiting from this land, even if the landowner takes the most important decisions. So we have, this also needs to be understood, but I'm not going into it because I will not have the time. So we have these different types of animals, and the most famous is the Iberian pig, where you can do the ham from, and the Spanish ham is more known than the Portuguese, but the Portuguese is as good. And then you have the you have the cork and the wood, which is used mostly for charcoal. And it's connected with that, you have hunting, you have beekeeping, you have the mushroom picking, and a very high biodiversity, both in the plant communities and in the animal communities. So it's really recognized as a hotspot of biodiversity. And it's therefore increasingly valued, is increasingly recognized as a system you need to preserve. It has been indicated by the European Commission as one of the most important high nature value farming systems of Europe, together with the Dehesa in Spain. And it occupies, as a whole, it occupies about 1 million hectares, so it's not a very small area. And it has been growing in recognition. But what we see today is that it is threatened. It is threatened because this type of productions we have, they are not specialized or competitive. They are these multiple productions. They need or they require specific skills, for instance, for cork harvesting. This is just a picture of someone taking the cork, and you need to be trained with people which are already skilled in order to do this in a proper way, otherwise you will damage the tree. You need to regulate your grazing, the grazing of the animals, so that you allow for the natural regeneration of the tree. So you need somehow to really do a system management in order to preserve this balance. And this is what is against the specialization and productivist paradigm we have today. So what are the challenges? They are increasingly demanding because the system is so complex, and the whole paradigm of consultancy and advisory and the economic standards that the farmers need to work with, they push them through this simplification and specialization. And what we see in the Natura 2000 site, this is one municipality related with this Natura 2000 site I just showed you about Montemor. You see, this is just a curve showing how cattle has been increasing and how sheep has been decreasing. And this is just to show you how these changes have been very fast. And when you increase cattle, you increase not just, you change the livestock, but you also increase the number of animals grazing per hectare. And this is a direct result of the coupled livestock payments. Within the Common Agriculture Policy, we still have coupled payments for livestock. And that means that it's more profitable for the farmer to have more animals on the fields. And the conservation measures existing, even if it's a Natura 2000 site, they are limited to specific spots, to specific fields or to specific types of fields, saying here you need to maintain a biodiverse grazing, or here you receive some payment for this type of practice or this type of practice, but they are much more limited, while the Common Agricultural Policy is much more general in influencing the whole decision-making of the farmer. So this is just to show you what's going on, or to give an idea. This is an aerial photograph of the landscape. It's very fuzzy, as you can see. And what happens with the Montado then, if you increase the grazing intensity, there's a direct relation with the disappearance of trees. You have less and less trees. And that's not because you cut the trees, but because too heavy cattle grazing and compaction of the soils and mechanization of the work in the field will lead to the death of some trees and lack of regeneration. So it's the clearances who get bigger and not the whole area which is cut. So it's a small change, a small step-by-step change, but the result is that the Montado is disappearing. So the Montado is still there. We still have more than 1 million hectares, but every year it's reducing. And the process is this one. So you have a dense Montado, and then progressively you have less trees and you have less regeneration, and you end up with an open area which will not have the same interest at all. And it's very difficult to have a new plantation growing up from scratch if you don't have the other trees already there. And because we have these problems of scarcity of water and very shallow soils, other types of systems will always be more poor systems than the Montado system. And this is just to give you an idea. It's not related with the area, but the area, the Montemor area, is also under this process. We have this loss in average. Not in the last 10 years, we don't have the figures, but before we have this loss of 5,000 hectares per year loss in Montado. So it's a problem. And what do we do from research? I'm coming from a research perspective, and I'm working a lot with these farmers and working a lot with agriculture management. So the questions we have been raising are very much related with what is driving this management. Why can this system, which is such an interesting system, which is highly valued from a lot of European decisions and regulations and strategies, and also at national level, why is it disappearing? Who is taking, why are the decisions taken that lead it to disappearance? So we are trying to see behind this process, or these patterns of what's going on with the landscape, to understand the processes. And to understand the processes at the farm level, but then also at the other levels which influence farmers. So we're trying to understand decisions at different governance scales. And we have made two different approaches, which I will not have the time to explain, but we have made through surveys to farmers and inquiries to farmers, try to understand what are the farmers' beliefs, the farmers' attitudes, and how is this coordinated or not with their behaviors, with their practices. So understanding the farmer's self-concept, and whether the practice is what they are doing, if they are happy or pleased with what they are doing, and in what way could they be doing differently. And then in other projects and in other research line, we are using the transition theory, which is a theory coming from social sciences, helping us to understand, is there room for innovation? Is there room for doing something else from the regime level? So from the agriculture sector and institutions and advisors working with farmers, do they create a room for another type of management to occur? So this was looking at the farmer, and this was looking at the farmer interaction with the regime, with the sector, with the whole sector. And that helped us a lot, because that made us possible to see what could be another way of functioning for farmers and what needs to be changed for that. So what we realize as a result is that the farmers, in fact, they very often are in a dilemma. They would like to be. They are aware of the new societal demands. They have been in this farm for generations most often, so they are family farms which have been going on from generation to generation. They hear about multifunctional management models, but there is a conflict between the different sector policies. There is no integration between the different sector policies. So the farm policy, the agriculture policy is saying something, and conservation policies is saying something else. And people are not discussing in between them, the advisors or the administrators, and therefore the conflict is put on the farmer to follow one line or another line. they have this tension, and from what is stronger, it's their integration in their community of farmers. It's still the place where they feel they belong to. So the farmer self-concept pushes them to intensify. But it's not a straightforward decision, and very often they're having a multifunctional behavior, so a multifunctional management, and they would like to be more productivist, or the opposite. So very often they are in contradiction inside themselves. And why the preservation of the Montado is not a priority if it's so well known and understood and in a lot of strategies. Somehow the productivist ideal is linked to this, to the social position within the farming community, and the lack of a rural framework, a framework which puts everything together, kind of understanding that this type of rural land use, it's another one, it's different from the productivist paradigms, and we could make it differently. And there's also a very low culture of innovation traditionally. And the multifunctional ideal is linked to this role of farmer as a family heritage, the knowledge of the biophysical constraints. They know it's dangerous to intensify too much, and the opening up to new people coming in. So there is drivers pushing in one direction and in another direction. And one or the other could be strengthened. But this depends of the orientations given to farmers from somewhere else in the regime. So if they stay alone with what is there now, they will be continue pushed to intensification. Looking at the regime, so looking at the sectors, the way the agricultural regime, the conservation regime, the recreation regime, and I don't know if you know this terminology, but it comes from this transition theory. It has to do with sectors and institutions and actors working in one sector. There seems to be no place for the needed innovation. The regime continues working on the same way all the time. There is no interaction between these regimes. So the farmer gets one, as I told before, one advice from one sector and another from the other and another from the other. And the pressures which are there in the agricultural regime, they are somehow deviated. They are pressures from society saying we want a more environmental friendly farming, but this is deviated to create some niches or support some niches which will do differently, but not really to change the dominant paradigm. So it's like the policies remain strongly focused on commercial production, supported by equally focused analytical models. We have not been good enough in research showing how it could be differently. So when we are looking at farms production or farms rentability, we're always using, or research is using, the same type of economic models which show only one way. And this is also a limitation. And more than that, there is no formal or informal rules about how could it be, what is desirable, what type of management will be more desirable for our landscapes. We are just following the common agriculture policy without this reflection being done at the regional level or at the national level. And therefore, there are opportunities there which are being lost, and they are really obvious opportunities. It will be an opportunity to maintain farm systems supporting these multiple services, because they depend, these ecosystem services and public goods, they depend on the farm system. It will be an opportunity to recouple farming with the rural, recouple the integration of farming in the rural. To nurture the cultural identity in this globalized world, to nurture the identity which is in this region very much connected with the farm systems. To reinvent these place-based stewardships where farmers will be working with the remaining people in the community, and to enhance societal acceptance of farming broadly. So it will be a way to put the landscape in the agenda if the opportunities which are there could be better used. So what I think are the main challenges, or what are the challenges we have in this area of Portugal, in this region of Europe, to put the landscape in the agenda? We started thinking we needed to work with farmers, with land managers, but now we understand the ones who are using these amenities, all the users, those who come and live in the countryside, those who have another opinion, they have to be integrated because they are influencing the farmers in their social networks, in their community. We need to look at the mindset of farmers, but much more than that. We need to look at the mindset of all these regime actors, which are those who are working in institutions, working in advisory boards, working in ministries, working in the sector, which is much closer to the farmers. So it's not just the mindset of farmers, but also the mindset of all other regime actors. There's a lot of discourse which point in the good direction, but we need to focus more on practices and less on discourses. And we need to be creating knowledge together. So for changing these paradigms, and that, I think that's the objective of today, put people together. But I would maybe think that it could be more from what I saw outside of the posters and everything, more farmers involved also, because farmers are the ones who are doing this management in practice. So there are resources which we are not looking at. There are resources in farm systems. They are in these heterodox forms of agriculture, which has been a tradition in the periphery, in the southern periphery of Europe at least, and in the cultural background of farmers. Farmers are not just productivists. They have different persons inside themselves, as we all have. They are complex persons. And if we could take some other areas or promote some other of their concerns more than the other ones, maybe we'll have other resources than what we have today. And I think that's all. Yes. Thank you very much for your attention.